All right, calling this meeting to order at 4:05 p.m. I'll now call the roll. Vladimir,
Here.
Brian,
Present.
Stella, here, Jim,
Here.
and I, Shelley, am here as well. Would any board members like to provide comment on today's agenda? Seeing none, then may I please have a motion to approve the agenda as presented?
So moved.
Thank you, Vladimir. I have a second. All second. Thank you, Stella. Motion to approve today's agenda as presented was made by Vladimir, seconded by Stella. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Great. Motion passes unanimously. Alrighty, moving on to our study sessions, design concepts for the San Antonio campus. Are there any?
I do believe we have a public comment.
Oh. Yes.
Yes.
Well, it would make more sense if it wasn't at the
Point of
beginning.
order.
Yeah, we usually have the comments after the board discusses.
Because my comment may become
I
irrelevant.
think the challenging thing is the presentation is like a work session. You know what I mean? That's the challenge
So I'm just
today.
gonna go by the
Yeah.
order that's on here. So,
If I have concerns, I will email you afterwards. I know how to find you. I'll see you at 6 p.m. or 7 p.m. So, okay.
With that threat, we move on.
public comment is closed. You wanna do this one?
I asked Eric to do a little better.
So good afternoon. We're here today to do a study session. And we have Coach Rocky, Block Architects with Nick Stephenson.
Everybody.
And we have Amber Emery with Block Construction. And about this time last year, the board approved a design build contract with Block Construction for the 10 site, now called the San Antonio campus. And today we're going to talk about some of the design concepts. The district has been working very hard with our design build team with Block and Coach Rocky Block. And then we're also working in partnership with the city of Sunnyvale. I'm sorry, city of Mountain View, part of the joint use field. And we were working very hard on getting some of the field design and the joint use gym. We did all that work really up until about November of last year. And so this is a great community benefit, as you know, to the Mountain View, Los Altos community. So today they're going to give an update on kind of some of the concepts of things of where things would be spaced out, the number of classrooms in the buildings, and kind of like the layout. You've seen most of the drawings already about where the fields and the gym and all that has kind of been done already in front of the board, but today we're gonna kind of dive a little bit deeper into where the buildings are laid out and some of the programs and things. So I'm gonna kind of hand it off to Nick and Amber.
And I'll just let you know, my colleague Ellen Powers is going to be joining. She had an appointment she couldn't change, so I'm just giving her the grace if she comes in late. She could be right on time, but she should be here in the next few minutes. We're very excited to share with you some of our progress on the design concepts for the San Antonio site to keep things moving out here. So yeah, actually I realized that I didn't do an agenda when I was practicing this morning. So I guess I'll just give the preface. So I'm gonna go through a little bit, like really quick, kind of like what FOLIA is. I know a lot of you have toured the site already, but just give a quick overview of that and then get into the design concepts, which I know you're all are probably very excited to see. And then we'll touch on the schedule a little bit at the end, and obviously lots of questions. So what is FOLIA? It's a pre-engineered classroom building with a 2-story and a 1-story. So the PC approval with DSA, the Division of the State Architects, so it makes permitting go much quicker. But this was a partnership between Block and QKA and also a structural engineer partner of ours, GPLA, to really kind of reinvent and rethink how we design school buildings. And so we put a lot of thought into making a really efficient building to build. So you can see here like prefabricated wall panels, prefabricated roof panels, steel, the reinforcing steel, and just other efficiencies that we can garner by getting that partnership with the contractor and how we build things, the partnership with the design and the engineering of the building. So we've created this building footprint. There's also still a lot of flexibility within it. We kind of have some of the standard layouts, but if some of you, I think toward the Milpitas Innovation Campus or maybe some of our other projects, there's a lot we can do within that. And Nick will talk on that a little bit about for your program here, about some of the customization that we can do within that framework to get some of your programs in here. And so, you know, what this means for all of you, so we can design this much quicker because it's already basically designed except for the customization, and we can build it much faster. And then because it's very efficient and thought out, there's a lot less waste in the building process, also less labor because it's more efficient. So there's a lot of cost savings, but you're not giving up any quality. I'd say you get the same, if not better quality with this building because of all the labor we've done going into it, and that some of the work's done in the shop. And again, as this was designed, there's a lot of thought about the high performance of the building. We want to really create a great learning environment for the students. So this high performing learning environment. You've got the clear story, a lot of natural light in these, not just, you know, like 2 dinky windows that you get in a lot of like classrooms and portables, the LED lighting, the HVAC system, obviously very important with natural ventilation and mechanical ventilation, the steel and concrete floors, a lot of thought gone into the sound. So that's, yeah, but the concrete and steel create soundproof between the floors, but then also like acoustic ratings in the HVAC. Probably have some older buildings you've been inside of where the HVAC is very loud. So really trying to minimize those distractions for the kids, and all good kind of materials that are selected inside the building to create a really good environment for the kids. And then low maintenance, right? Because we turn over these buildings or we have these school you guys, right? Counting every single penny. So a lot of thought into a building that's really gonna last for a long time and low maintenance, and you know, after 50+ years. So here are some standard floor plans. It's probably a little hard to read on here. You have the printouts. These are just kind of our basic floor plans. And like I mentioned, there's a lot of customization we can do within it, but kind of your standard 2-story folia has 12 classrooms, you know, 1st and 2nd floor, 6 per floor. It's 10 standard classrooms sizes and then an oversized classroom on the left side on the end. So that, you know, those can be used for on each side here. So like, here's an example. It could be a science lab, an art studio, could be a maker lab, flexibility in that. And then in between each of the classrooms, there's these cores here. So you could put restroom cores in there. They could be breakout spaces, custodial. We've done all sorts of different things within these extra spaces here to customize for your program, the care prep room, you know, so variety of things we can do with that. And then there's not a lot of load bearing wall. There are some brace frames in here, but we have a lot of flexibility where like these 2 classrooms can be opened up, or like you'll see when it shows you, where we're opening up like 3 classroom spaces to make an admin or a library or different options there. So here's some photos of our typical classroom building, you know, 2nd floor and 1st floor classroom. And then like I mentioned, we made like administration spaces within that footprint. You know, fun maker lab, and it's probably the most kids' favorite spot on campus. And so here's an example of the science lab. So we're doing all art studio on that kind of thing. And then we have our standard 1-story classroom, which here's a layout where you see like 2 like oversized classrooms, and then these spaces in between. When it's kinder TK, we add a restroom in there. They can have office and kind of breakout spaces in between.
How large classrooms are 962 or more?
Standard is 960 and oversized is like 12 to 1400 square feet.
Yeah, yeah. And the breakout rooms are how big?
They vary, in like, yeah, I don't know, yeah, they probably vary a couple, like 100 to like 300 or 400 square feet.
It's a 10-foot wide.
Yeah.
Building.
Just to add on to that, could we actually get a copy of this with the scale or the dimensions of each room?
Yeah.
Thank you.
And then, yeah, so for the kinder, so here's the 1-story, and then here's a sample, like a kindergarten classroom. You can see here, that's like the restroom right there. That's connected to the classroom, and then here's like an office space that connects between the 2. This one's from Hatch Elementary and Half Moon Bay. So lots of flexibility there. I think when we did the tour was asked, I mean, it was from the chart, what chart, what she was asking for the dimensions too. I was appreciating you guys nerd out like us, and see what you could fit in there. But with that, I'm actually gonna turn it over to Nick as the architect who can speak to all of that. The layouts for you guys.
Yeah,
for
so
this
thanks, everyone. So, just some design parameters as we start looking at the options. As Amber mentioned, the programming for the fields and the parking lot and the blacktop in the gym. So if I can use this, right? So this is kind of pretty set at this point. And so that's gonna be consistent between all three options we look at. Not to say that we can't, further evolve that stuff, but for right now, the three options are consistent in those regards, okay? Another thing that's consistent in all three options is we try to keep some of this quasi-public spaces as close to the parking and drop-off as we could. So in all three options, you're gonna see the TCAN kindergarten right up against the parking lot as close as we could. You're gonna see the gym right there. We're trying to get the NPR and the admin up there as well. Okay, so those are things that are consistent. Something else that's consistent is that all the loading of the classrooms are based on your district's standards as they were shared with us. So every TK through third grade has consistent loading, and every third grade beyond has consistent What's loading. that loading? It's right here in the table, so it's Oh, okay. 24 students, and then it drops up to 27 when you get into older classrooms. Okay, so that's consistent among each option. And then things that jump around a little bit is the number of SPED classrooms, special ed classrooms, number of flex labs or STEAM labs, as they're called in some of the diagrams. We kind of bounce back and forth with that. So those things will change a little bit. And then I'll get into the other specifics as we go. So I'm gonna show you three options, talk to you about a little bit about how each one's different from the other. And then I'm gonna show you a slide that has all three options, and we can recap, summarize, and start hopefully opening up the conversation and answer any questions you might have, okay? So I'm gonna zoom into this option because it's just easier to read, but before I do so, here are the number of classrooms, total of 26 classrooms with concept number 1. Okay, and you have 4 flex labs or STEAM labs, and then 2 special ed classrooms. And then you have 2 for every grade, 2 classrooms for every grade from TK through 8th grade. Okay,
Does SPED classroom imply a smaller space?
it would be a regular sized classroom for the purposes of this project. It could well be, depending on districts, they load them with only 12 kids, so maybe you could have a smaller space, but we're using a typical 9-6.
So then it's flex lot, I'm just trying to understand the
Yeah.
difference between SPED and flex when you
Yeah.
kind of use spaces for
So
various
flex
things.
lab would be for anything you'd want to use for the whole school population. Oh, that's an excellent question, because I also want to say flex labs are not loaded space. It's space that you come to from your class and use. Okay, so that's something to point out. So it could be a band classroom, it could be a maker space, it could be a science lab. You know, it can be any of those things that you'd like it to be, but it is larger than a normal classroom. And as Amber mentioned, the basic Folia building as it is pre-approved by DSA contains some larger spaces for this very purpose. Yes, sir.
This says that there's 4 flex spaces, but you said that D counts as flex, so there's actually 5.
Yeah, that was you noticed earlier that
Yeah.
that flex on the bottom left corner should be sped.
Yeah.
I think-
Yeah, thank you.
Oh, so there's 2.
Yeah, I was getting.
Okay,
that one,
all right.
Thank you.
That's fine.
Yeah. So let me go ahead and zoom in. So this is option 1. And as just pointed out, there are actually, this is a typo on our part, there's 2 special ed classrooms instead of this, so the flex lab should have
Got it.
changed to special ed. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4 STEAMs.
Yep.
And we have 2 classes per grade for the lower grades and for everybody, right? So every grade has 2 classrooms dedicated to that grade level.
Yep.
We have 3 custom buildings, one being the gym, one being the NPR, and one being the admin. And as I mentioned, these are all kind of designed to be next to the parking lot. The TKK buildings are 1-story folios, as Amber described earlier. And then the rest of the campus is composed of the 2 2-story folio buildings. So there's 2 2-story folio buildings back to back. And it's a 2-story building. That's what this is. This is the 2nd floor of these buildings. And then these are the other folio buildings that are 1-story. And Amber, I can't remember. I think
Yeah, the
it's-
admin, we try and put that into one, make that work with a 1-story folia.
Yeah.
It'd be quite a bit of
It looks the
efficiency there.
same size. so
Yes,
I'm
square
assuming
footage
that
wise,
was folio.
yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So so that's what option 1 is giving you.
Oh, just to confirm, the STEAM rooms are the same size as the regular classrooms.
No, thank you. They are larger. And does it show the?
They're about 1,200 square feet, and
Yeah.
then you've got the breakout space next to it, so if
Yeah.
you need something more, you can add that onto it.
So standard classroom is 960 square feet. And the STEAM labs or the oversized spaces are 1,200 to 1,300 square feet, depending on how you use that space in between. That little space that could be toilet rooms or breakout rooms or et cetera, okay?
And one of the things that we made sure was, and Nick mentioned at the beginning of the presentation, was having TK and K closer to the front, because it's easier for parents for drop off. Also, the admin building for security and safety, we want that to be a central point of location, there'll be a gate to come through. And then the other issue is NPR, because the NPR for like nighttime events and some bigger things, we want those to be towards the front. So trying to move some things around to get most of those buildings closer to the front is better for the school. And then the gym has been kind of locked in that location for a while, adjacent to the parking lot for functions at night, for athletic events as well, after school events.
So Eric, speaking of the fencing, exactly where would it go around?
This is, kind of conceptual and concept, so as we got into construction drawings, we'd be making sure we'd have some more delineation where the fences would be.
But I assume the gym would be outside the fence because of the joint use.
Yeah, most likely that's where it'd be. There would be a fence probably around it, but as far as, the community could come in on the weekend park, their neighbor could go directly to the gym. They would have to usually probably go through a fence. But there would be fencing separating the school and the play yard, just like our schools are coming like that.
But the lockers are for our kids though.
That's,
Yes.
So why would our lockers be outside the fence? I mean, I understand the gym is outside the fence, but
I think the goal would be to, and we have this come up a lot, this is an excellent question. The goal would be to have, an opportunity to lock the campus, I hate to use the word lockdown, but to, secure the campus during the school day. So there'd be some sort of perimeter established, so during the school day, the only way to get on site is to go through the admin building and then into it. So there would be some barrier, whether it be fencing or card control doors, or, every district has their own strategy there. In addition to that, after hours, there are certain buildings that the community wants access to, or the after hours, library, NPR, gym. So there sometimes is a second level of perimeter security where you can still, like, people can still gain access to the gym, but there would still be a barrier between the gym and say
I see.
this whole area.
okay,
Yeah,
like a second.
yeah.
On the weekends, you don't want people using
Yeah.
the fields to get onto your campus.
That's often what happens is people want to share the multi-use room or the gym, but they don't want to share the whole campus at night, just that building. So we have that kind of two-tiered security around those buildings. And we can strategize that with you and make it work for you, however.
Eric, I know there isn't a standard answer, but about how big is a classroom currently?
They're all, most of our classrooms are about 960.
Oh, okay,
That's pretty standard size.
okay, all right,
Any like portables are all standard 960, but
okay,
yeah, you're right. I mean, yeah, Fremont Union's where they have some small classrooms, so those
Yeah.
schools are pretty standard.
okay.
And then our TKs and Ks are a little bit bigger as well. The back.
Yeah.
Yeah, 1250 is the state kind of target. Yeah. Okay, so to summarize, and we can always come back as I mentioned. Yes, sir, couple more?
Yeah, just a question. Up of the NPR, between the NPR and the gym, or some stuff, what's there?
Good question. I didn't speak to that at all. So what we're showing, in addition to the building footprints, are conceptual site design amenities. And we're trying, so what you're seeing, those blue triangles are shade cloths. So basically what we're saying, and then the little gray line work is some different type of paving that's not blacktop and it's not straight concrete. So we're trying to point to the idea of this space is going to be a little bit more soft, a little bit more friendly, a little bit more shady. And you can see that we've zoned the spaces. The area around the TK is more of a playground, a little play structure-y. And the areas between the middle school and up by the gym, those are maybe more a student hangout, outdoor learning, student gathering, that kind of stuff. Nothing set in stone yet. And we'll hopefully have the opportunity to walk through this with you all. Yes.
So the library, is the library like two regular classroom sizes or is that, because you didn't mention the library as a custom space?
Right. So in this option, we are putting the library, which is different from the other options, in the Foley building on the first floor. So it's gonna be about 2,700 square feet. So that's a little bit bigger than 2 classrooms because it's 2 standard classrooms plus that little space between them. So it's 960 plus that little corridor. Okay.
Just one minor question, just because the other two options kind of called out a dining or lunch area and this one didn't. So like, I'm kind of assuming that that would end up where the courtyard is, but I didn't just want
Yeah,
to make sure that
you're
that was.
absolutely right. Yeah, sorry, we didn't call it out consistently. It could be the area between the NPR and the admin. It could be the area between the gym and the NPR. As far as outdoor dining goes, right? Yeah, absolutely.
Then for Universal Meals, the NPR, at the end of the NPR is gonna be a servery. So that's where the food process would happen right there at the end of the NPR.
Okay, so,
I mean, we could flip it whatever way. you
Okay.
want, yeah.
all right, summarizing concept one, we have a capacity for 526 students in this option, just based on the ratios. We have a total of 26 classrooms. 4 of those are the STEAM or flex labs, and 2 of those are the special eds. Okay. On concept number 2. So in concept number 2, we've taken, a lot of our districts have situations where the lower grades are higher and higher attendance in the lower grades than the higher grades for various reasons. Some districts are phasing in their TK, so there's more kids there than the other campuses. Some districts have upper grades that are into charter schools, so sometimes fit. So for various reasons, there's often a scenario where the lower grades have more classrooms and more kids. So this kind of studies that. So you'll notice in concept 2, you'll see 3 classrooms per grade instead of just 2 for TK through 3rd grade. And then 4th through 8th grade, you'll see 2 classrooms as we showed in the previous option. Another variance in this option is there's only 1 special ed, but there still are 4 of the flex STEAM labs. So we have a total of 30 classrooms in this option for 642 capacity. So this will be our largest capacity and our largest number of classrooms, 3 options. All the TK buildings and kindergarten buildings are still in single-story buildings. They're still clustered around the parking. Now we have 3 custom buildings. We have a library and administration building. That's a custom building that houses those 2 uses. So they're no longer in the folio buildings. So what that could do is that now the folio buildings are not customized at all. So getting back to Amber's point, now those 2 folio buildings can be faster through regulatory, faster through design, things like that, because they're not customized. And that would be the pro of making that admin and library building be a site-built custom building. So what we have is we have the gym as previously indicated and the NPR, but now you see right in the middle is a 3rd custom building. And again, all these uses are trying to compete for this space right here. So that's what governs their location.
I'm sorry, so you said there were 3 custom buildings?
Yes, sir. There's the gym,
Yeah.
there's the admin library, and there's the NPR.
So, sorry.
No, this is why we're having this.
Yeah.
All your questions.
So in this design. Well, okay, I have 2 questions, but,
Oh, you could already ask one.
okay, well, I won't save the other one for later. So these custom buildings, if we do, the more we do of those, the more it slows down the process, is that they're not DSA approved
I
necessarily?
wouldn't say it slows it down. Amber's the expert here, but I'll just
Okay.
make my 2 cents. What's driving the critical path, if you will, is the custom building. It's the longest duration. So whether we do, and we can build them all concurrently for the most part. So whether we do 1, which is the gym, and we kind of have to, because we don't have a fully, or we do more, that duration's fixed. It's just, if you for some reason wanted to get the other buildings built quicker, maybe you have some sort of phasing of your occupancy, that's where we're pointing.
So,
Right on that?
Yeah, I mean, right, yeah, it shouldn't make a huge difference because we are doing some custom, so we have them in 3 different phases.
okay,
But yeah, I mean, it could, but right now I wouldn't say that's a driving factor.
okay, that's fine, so then. In this second concept, the admin building is bigger, and the library building may be a little bit bigger, a little bit smaller. So could you just put two folio buildings there and
Yeah,
as opposed to having custom buildings?
you could. You could, we get into a little bit of
Or
a.
is that in other design? Sorry.
No, this is perfect. This is absolutely perfect. This is great. As you know, as we noted in the beginning, we kind of have this line here, right? That we can't really
Yeah.
cross. So we're all competing for space in
Yep.
here. And, so we could put two buildings side by side right here. The code would require a little bit of a gap between the two of them. So it's just, how close to the gym can we get? How close to the MBR can we get so that we can put two buildings in there? Seems like it should certainly be able to be done, to your point. Yeah.
Okay.
And did you have a question?
Well, I was gonna say that, the custom buildings cost more than the folio ones, right? So I would
Yes.
think-
Yeah, the cost per square foot of the custom. And you'll see, I think we get to the last slide too, there's different square footages of each of these options have different square footages, which are different dollar values as well. And yeah, the cost per square foot of a custom, I mean, it's not a huge difference, but it is adds, it's a couple $100 difference between a custom and a full.
So there's more kids in option two, but a smaller library. With more kids.
That may be true.
Looking at the dimensions.
Can't read it on here,
Yeah.
it's 20.
Looks like it's 20.
Well, it's 27 something in option one
Yeah.
and 20,
Oh, yeah, okay.
2250.
Yeah, I'll say, what's driving the size of these two in the custom buildings comes from the bridging documents that we received, so that's kind of like their target square footage. But then when we go ahead and put it in Folia, we kind of bounced it into that module. So it kind of flexes, and we didn't want to shrink it, so I think they both are a little bit bigger.
Probably, yeah, because it was fitting within the space though.
Yeah,
Well, the reason why I asked is that we'd like to have wellness spaces on our campuses. And I don't see like where that would, this is like classrooms, right? And NPR, et cetera. So I'm just thinking you could probably take part of the library and make a wellness space, but I'm just trying to figure out.
Or a flex
Sure, or
classroom
any,
too,
yeah.
or.
Flex classroom, if there's fewer need for a dedicated special ed classroom, it could be in that space as well.
And those STEAM classrooms could be
Yeah.
music rooms or wellness rooms or whatever.
Yeah.
We're just saying they're STEAM, but they're really flex.
yeah,
Okay.
But then if you want them to be steam, then they need like the special hoods and the ventilation and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, so as we program it, I mean, right, we had what, 4 in both of these options, right? I've had 4, so I don't know that you need 4
For
science labs or like, so once we kind of
Yeah.
dial that in there, maybe.
these are great questions.
Nice. Are the sort of the 1-story option and then the 2-story L, are those the only folio shapes? Are there other pre-approved shapes?
Question, those are the pre-approved, but we've done a lot of customization, like Cupertino and Lynbrook High School, actually both examples where we did, at Cupertino, we did 2 standard folios and then my custom science lab that was just a straight 2-story. And so we still used our prefabricated, a lot of the efficiencies that we got from our PC, but we did a custom building with it. So we do have some ability to do that. Obviously, it's the most efficient, easiest, it fits in the L, but we can definitely customize it. We've utilized the panelization.
So like the custom 2-story, you save on construction costs, but you don't get the DSA pre-approval pass.
Yeah, I was just thinking, how was it explain that? All right, yes, sir.
Are there no, DSA pre-approved gyms?
There's, I think there's one modular one that I think we saw built at, Laytonville?
I mean, there's different, because like because we have a PC, but we're not, this fully is not modular, or the pre-approved, pre-check with DSA, but, it doesn't directly like compete with modular companies, because if you go modular, you're gonna give up some of the quality and the longevity of the building, but certainly, I mean, I haven't done a modular.
Yeah, I think there are pre-approved gyms that are modular in construction. It's really not the same animal as our Folia product. That's why we don't say this is a comparable thing in that regard. But given that we have, the locker room component and the, desire for a high school sized gymnasium with some bleachers, I think we're getting outside the bounds of like the footprint of a modular gym. All right. So. Moving on to concept number 3. So concept number 3, this will be our.
Sorry, can you back up one second? I just saw something on concept 2. The shaded outdoor dining space is quite reduced. Is that gonna be enough for 642 kids or 600?
Yeah, because you have less,
Oh, yeah.
but you've
yeah.
less,
Well,
hard
it
space
depends.
area, yeah.
It depends on what your goals are. In other words, we haven't had a conversation. So if you want to be able to see the whole campus outside and have the whole campus shaded while we see them outside, that's quite a bit of shading, and we can do that, but it's probably not what we've shown here. It's just a first pass. Really, we're just trying to study is the configuration of the buildings and how we might be able to use the space that's left over. But if you have a programmatic need, we need 600 kids to be able to eat outside and be shaded, then we look at that real specifically, and give you that space.
And
I think that my guess, my suspicion is that all schools have the same lunchtime, right?
I don't know, I mean, my kid's school is staggered, but I don't know what you guys.
Yeah. Yeah, unfortunately, these day and age staggered is not unfortunate, but it is kind of popular, or at least.
Well, I'm a gardener. Some kids eat at 12:15. Another kids eat at 12:15 to 12:30 or I don't know. like-
Play first.
Yeah, like they play first and then eat or eat and then play.
I don't think any of our schools have shaded tables for the entire school population.
And they'll be, in the NPR, there'll be indoor spaces to eat as well, right?
It's all.
Yeah.
You have to read it.
Only 'cause we're small.
Too.
And then one thing, Vladimir, is like there's always space, but then you have to give up something. You might give like outdoor flag stuff, like where the four square or where the ball games are at. So some of the blacktop space that's to the left of this NPR could be utilized for that. But then you would lose some of that outdoor play space for PE and things like that. So there's always a trade-off. It's just kind of where to put it.
And then just so you're, so say like, for my kids' school, like, some of the kids eat in the NPR, some eat outside, some of them just, like, my daughter like eats in like the little like outdoor like classroom area. And then, yeah, they stagger the kinders, and then I think like first through third and then fourth and fifth are different. You have a middle school.
Is the NPR large enough to hold lunch when it rains?
That's a good question. I'm not sure on the capacity of the dining hall when it rains. It's not designed yet, but there's probably some, in the Bridgie documents, there's probably a target. We just have to double check that. Yeah. One thing we could do, and we often do, is have, we like to create as much transparency as we can between those types of spaces. So a lot of our designs will have roll-up doors or double folding doors, so like the indoor dining room can connect right into the outdoor in kind of one big space. Part of it's inside, part of it's outside, but there's through connection, if you will. But these are the things that we want to design more specifically.
Before you move on, what is this little blue building where the?
That's.
So that's a
field
field
house.
house, that's part of this joint venture with the city.
Oh.
So, okay, yeah, we frequently don't mention that, thank you. It's kind of part of the program for the fields, like the athletic facilities include the gym and the fields, and then this little toilet room building, which could have a snack bar. It also has a little
Okay.
garage for maintenance people.
Like storage of PE equipment and things like that.
Okay.
Yeah,
On the weekends, you don't have to open up the restrooms of your school, there's restrooms in the fields.
yeah.
If maybe little kids, the struggle of going to the soccer game, and there's like no bathrooms.
Yes, yes.
One final question.
Yes, sir.
On the NPR, you have some layout that's just suggestion or.
That's the one building that's a little bit more designed because we had to engage the city and kind of get their input. So of all the buildings here, that's the one where we.
Gym, you mean?
I'm sorry, gym. That's it, yeah. You're asking about the gym, right?
No.
No, I'm talking about the NPR.
Oh, I'm sorry. Those lines are just schematic.
Yeah, okay, all right, that's what I thought.
Yes.
What is the promenade? Like 20-foot leaves.
Good question. So, promenade's a fancy word. We try to use it because it sounds better than emergency vehicle access. But the local fire authority in the states require a certain width of clear space so fire trucks can get to the various buildings on campus. And so that's what that's designed to kind of reserve, earmark. Illustrate is that we have to keep that buffer between the fields and the gym. In other words, we can't push the gym closer to the fields to make more room for outdoor dining, because we need that fire lane.
Is that fire lane required into the central courtyard as well?
It is, to a point, so they can get to what drives the fire lane is how close to the buildings can they get with the fire truck and the hose. You can imagine there's a fire, they're trying to get to it, right? So you have the street along the perimeter to get to these perimeter buildings. You have the blacktop through that promenade to the blacktop, so you can get all the way down to that steam building with the fire truck, and then the hose lengths. You can also get between the TK and the NPR. That's another area that's wide enough to be compliant.
So that does need to be, that opening needs to be widened.
Yeah, at least, the way we show it now. Essentially, when we finalize the design, it may morph. In fact, it most certainly will morph from this. We'll just have to illustrate to the state architect's office that we can get the proper safety equipment to each building.
Before you move on, Vladimir brings up a good point about lunch when it's raining, and I've seen our kids like eating lunch in the classroom instead of, but if they're just supposed to get their food from the servery, cause I see you've got covered walkways in front of the classroom, but I would like to see covered walkways connecting the classrooms to wherever the servery is, so that the kids don't have to walk in the rain to get their food and then go back to their classroom.
Yeah, that's a good point.
You don't let it get wet.
They live in California, they gotta endure some of it.
Yeah, so yeah, certainly the design could evolve in that regard. Just, it's all about where you want to spend your money. So like if you get to a point where we have extra money, or you might get to a point where we have to give up that flex slab in order to pay for the covered walkway. So you have those kind of give and take, but yeah.
So speaking of safety, are there any exits from the classrooms that don't go into the center of the, in other words, are there any exits downwards or the sides?
I mean, out of the buildings.
Yes.
Out of the buildings. So I believe all the Folia buildings exit into the courtyard. So there's no exits on this backside.
There have been, you don't need exits on the outside. If you want, we have had instances where they wanted a door out the back, and it can certainly be added in if you want it, but it's not required, you don't need it.
Yeah. So we can get code compliant.
I don't know why you're asking the question, I guess, so.
Yeah.
It just seems that if you get to the shaded outdoor dining area, you've got access to practically everything.
Oh, right here, you mean?
Oh.
Yeah.
Yeah. And if you're, you were talking specifically exiting from the buildings, right? Yeah. Okay.
I mean, you can't jump out of the two-story.
Well, one of the things is sometimes on the backside of a lower story, you might have like a sidewalk around it and a door behind it, or we would, depending how we do the funnels network, it'd be just like, landscaping and that's how you design it.
Yeah, maybe it's a files fill or something like that, but if by design, like we had one, I think it was a special ed classroom, and then there was a back door to like a garden area. Out there, so that programmatically it made sense to add it, or some of the customization, because they have the doors on the other side, right, for community school, right, so they had their own blacktop area, and they didn't have to. It was actually, where they didn't want, there was a unique program that didn't want to be connected to the rest of the classroom, so they had the back door access there, so if wanted, you can add it, but standard, they're all facing that time.
And what did we do with the space between the two second grade classrooms?
Oh, this space.
Yeah.
Good question.
Yeah, I mean, this is the exact layout at Cupertino High School, so it's a connected like two-story walkway on the second floor. And the first floor, I think
It's a
breezeway,
yeah.
or I mean, it doesn't have to be, it could be whatever.
So, yeah, some campuses, the campus that Amber's referring to specifically at Cupertino High School, there's parking along here. And so this is a breezeway to some stairs that take you to the parking lot. Because this is all within the campus in that scenario. So that's what it could be. It can be outdoor breakout space. It could be storage, like if you wanted to, like I'm thinking of places where they have PE equipment and stuff, maybe put it there.
And it's also, if I remember, it's also covered because there's a second story above it, so you could put two picnic tables, that could be another seating area.
Yeah.
I know our third graders aren't driving yet, so we don't have to worry about that. But yeah.
What about?
Why not final question?
if you look at the diagram, there's the Hetch Hetchy right away there, and then to the right of it is a strip that's marked off in red. What is that strip?
That, I believe, is a bike path.
Oh, what?
Yes.
Bike path,
Okay, all right.
yeah.
So the head touchy, they won't let us put any kind of driveway or anything like that over it, yeah.
And I think the city's part setback, like we can hold that.
They wouldn't even let us put a fire lane over it too, they're pretty.
Right? Yeah. All right, so I'll move on to the third option, but keep the questions coming, I can bounce back and forth, and then we have one slide at the end of my chart that has all three of them side by side. They get smaller, so harder to see, but. Okay. So, option 3 will be the smallest capacity and the smallest number of classrooms, so, we have 24 classrooms. And the capacity is 514. In this option, we only have 2 of the flex labs, I'm sorry, yeah. Three, thank you. And 2 special ed. No, 1 special ed. There we go. Okay, so we'll get to the one I heard. Okay, so you see this one has less buildings, so there's a little bit more distribution of outdoor space. We've put the admin and the library into Folia buildings. So we only have 2 custom buildings in this scenario, the NPR being one and G being the other. And we only have 2 of each of the grades for the lower grades, so you only see 2 TK buildings instead of 3, or TKK buildings, you only see 2 of those single story folios instead of 3 of them. So those are the differences here.
Is TKK inherently single story, or could it also be like the bottom story of a 2-story structure?
It could be that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, from a code standpoint, I don't know, for the district, you might have your own.
Yeah, that would be the bottom of it.
Just it gets complex, like Nick was saying, we're trying to get the TK and kinder closer to the drop off. And then, the layouts of the 2-story, I mean, you can do it, but yeah, we're trying, those are bigger spaces, they're not standard 960 typically, I mean, districts do it in all sorts of different ways, so I know districts doing kinder out of a portable with no restrooms, but do it the right way, you're doing the 1250 square foot with the restroom.
So to follow up on that, how much more would it cost to put the 2-story L-shaped folia there instead of the 2 single-story buildings?
Good question. Are you suggesting a third 2-story
Yeah,
building?
just like how much would that extra would it cost? And we would definitely get more capacity out of it, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
so you put like the kinders in the first floor, but do another 2-story and customize the kinder on probably the whole first floor of that. Which is about 7,000 square feet.
Yeah.
So maybe you're still only gonna get, yeah, we have to crunch that, but that's an idea. And then the thing too, though, is the second floor, you're limited on the grades. It's a third enough?
Yeah, you wouldn't, generally speaking, you wouldn't put 3rd grade or below on the 2nd floor for some code exit reasons. There's ways to do it, but it's not really.
Could you just put space up there?
Or the.
But if the first graders have to as long as I guess the flex spaces are only for the middle schoolers, but if the first graders were accessing the maker. Yeah, sorry, I'll let the
No,
architect
you're
speak.
right, yeah. That's a little bit of an issue nuance that I want to study, because it's not, remember, the flex spaces are not occupied spaces or loadable spaces. So the code issue that comes up is, it's surprising how sometimes the code is so practical, right? So really it gets down to, you don't want an emergency situation, you don't want big people trying to run past little people. So for those reasons, the code is written in a manner that, anyone 2nd grade and below cannot be on a 2nd floor that has any kids bigger than them on 2nd floor. So, and to your point, if you had 4th graders in a flex lab and 2nd graders in a flex lab, we might be crossing a line with the code there. If they had to egress through the same path, which is the same stairs and or the same elevator.
Because in the high school, they put the admin stuff on the 2nd floor. You wouldn't put that above the TK kinders?
You could, you really could if you wanted to. The 2nd level admin is probably not as accessible as we might normally advise, you know? Yeah, yeah.
If a visitor comes in and they have to go upstairs, you want the gatekeeper.
But I think if I understand the gist of what you're asking, we could study what this would look like as a 2-story building and how we
Then
would
maybe
outfit that
there's
building.
some reconfiguration
Yeah,
of what's where.
Exactly, so thank you.
Well,
I mean, how committed are we to like what classroom is being used for whichever grade level at this point anyway, right? I assume that's just a placeholder for capacity estimation.
Yes.
But if for some reason we decided ultimately, oh, we want it to be TK5 or 6 through 8 or whatever, that's still, we could still change our minds down the road,
Thank you,
right?
yes, yeah.
Except for the kinder TK with the, if you want the oversized classroom with the restaurant, that's the only thing here.
Right, but even that, let's say worst case, we decided we wanted it to be a middle school, we could repurpose that room as some other type of
Absolutely.
space. Sure.
Absolutely, yes.
Be a dream classroom, right? The big classroom with the bathroom.
The dotted black line, is that the sort of perimeter that you put in?
Let me make sure, this dotted black line?
I think it's,
No,
It's your blow up line, or.
Oh, this,
it's the second story.
yeah, I think the one
mirror
on the left
line.
is just reflecting the same story.
this right here?
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, this is just showing you what is the two-story component and then or what is a two-story building? And unfortunately, this is just bound in the middle of it. So that's why that's
Oh,
shown
so
here.
you copy and pasted it over for the.
So,
It's so hard to show
Yeah.
to the second floor on a one sheet.
so really, it's just saying, hey, this dash line points you to here. And this is the second floor of this building, and this is the second floor of this building, and then you see the roof of this building.
Okay. The outdoor dining space, the shaded outdoor dining space, the 4 miserable trees, so the 3 miserable trees between the NPR and the admin could be cut down and replaced with a shade structure, right?
Yeah, it's very.
Right.
So we have to get permits for that.
Yeah.
Well, there's no existing trees now, if you were leveling the site, we're not keeping any trees, like, we're starting from scratch, but yes, you can X them out of this drawing and put whatever you want there.
Oh, so I had a question about the play structure. So I see here, you just put one there near the TKK, but if we wanted a second one, like, is there flexibility in terms of adding that? Like, let's say where the outdoor learning area is, or I don't know also how flexible the blacktop area is, because I think in concept 1, you actually had a play structure there at the bottom of the blacktop area. Is that all still flexible?
I think that's all still flexible, yeah. What, let me see, what is kind of, fixed, if you will, is that there's a certain number of blacktop that the, city wants access to. I think you want a pickleball courts, basketball courts. Beyond that, you can make any blacktop beyond that, it could, you could trade that for a play structure. Or you could put different striking on there, maybe it's 4 square instead of basketball or what have you. Any of this space, like you could have TK play yard here and first, second, third grade here. You know, it'd be something, different scale and whatnot.
Sorry, can you, for clarity, because you had said before that like the fields and the gym and the parking and all that was programmed out with the city, so are you saying that the blacktop area has been programmed out with the city as well?
A certain portion of it has,
Just your joint use agreement in terms of square footage wise,
yeah.
what you owe them, but.
Well, we owe them fields, I don't know that I understood that we owed them
I might be over.
blacktop access.
Yeah.
Do we own outdoor basketball?
It's all part of a package deal, but there is some outdoor space, but
Sure.
again, we're trying to work with them about.
I guess what I'm trying to get at is, there's a lot I don't like about concept 3, but I like that it sort of felt like a larger cohesive campus. So I'm wondering on some of the other ones, and I'll defer to the educators, because it's not clear to me. Some of them, it sort of seems like the blacktop is an awfully long way and kind of in the back of other buildings, which seems potentially like an issue. So one of the things that I'm interested in asking about is whether we can reconfigure things a little bit to sort of maybe push some of the building, have the perimeter or something, just make it feel like more like the blacktop is right there outside the classroom, the way it is in a lot of campuses, rather than kind of down the hall around the corner.
Yeah.
So just conceptually, you want to take the gym, the admin building and swap them with the blacktop.
I mean, I don't know if I
Just
would, yeah, I don't know if I would start with this,
You
but
can't.
like, yeah, something like that.
Okay.
I think we can't really move. Yes, I appreciate your comments, but there is some flexibility, but I wanna say the gym's kind of locked into where it was because of a couple of other
Sure.
parameters, and I think the fire access was one of them.
Yes.
But the blacktop itself, I think there's lots of flexibility there. Because we moved that gym around in all sorts of different ways, and it ended up like, that was kind of weird.
So why don't we, for fun, go to here? Now, I know you'll have hard copies, it's still kind of in your hard copy, but this gives you an opportunity to kind of just compare side by side. and, think about it.
Do we want to talk a little process wise, what we're hoping, so to kind of, we've heard a lot of great, like, could we do that, and what if we could do that? And I think is the goal to come back on June 2nd with, or June 9th with something more maybe closer to what we think is what we want, what you all want.
Option 4, which is,
Yeah, yeah.
so takes in the,
All the
account
feedback.
all the feedback we heard today.
And then, I know this is like a later slide, but I think it might be helpful for them to understand like what the programming is, because that's a lot of what they're asking about is like the actual detail.
Yeah. So, I'll let Eric answer the point, but, yeah, we can come back, we can take this feedback and treat it like another option or another couple options and create that. One of the things we typically do is, this is often the first of several site committee meetings or design programming meeting, where we kind of have an iterative process where we meet with you guys, reflect back to you what you told us and meet again, did we get it right? And each time we add a little bit of something extra, like this time we're gonna also talk about colors. This time we're gonna make sure we got that right, and now we're gonna talk about building form and what kind of materiality you want. You know, and so that's the design process. We don't necessarily need to start that process to have a direction. But we certainly want to have that process before we get into construction documents, if that makes any sense.
So maybe this is Eric's, or second. Refresh my memory, the field space is fixed.
Pretty much, yeah. Yeah, and then I'm writing a lot of notes down about things that I'm hearing about, you know, outdoor space, playground, places for kids to eat lunch. Outdoor playground that's not just for TK, because the other grade levels are gonna want some sort of outdoor play. Obviously, the older kids are gonna be doing other things, right? They're not gonna be, they might be on a blacktop playing basketball or other things. Talking about, I mean, these are the things I'm hearing, and then also, I think the flexibility, the great thing, big thing is the flexibility of where the spaces are at, about the size of the rooms and things like that. We're not committing ourselves to any particular design or size or anything, but where things are laid out and then what's possible based on the variable space. We know that, like we said, the fields and the park and all that, that's kind of like in the parking lot's kind of a fixed space. But it's what's inside the rest of that. We have a little bit of flexibility to move things around. A custom built building, might be a little bit longer in the DSA review process, but it's also a little bit more, because it's custom, it does cost more. So I'm being mindful of our costs. So the more we can fit inside a fully building, it's more cost better for the district. So those are things I'm just like thinking of. But yeah, but we're not committing ourselves to a particular design or anything finalized, but we do want to get moving so we can start the actual programming of how each classroom be used. A regular, I guess you could say 1st grade through 5th grade classrooms, and 6th grade would be pretty standard classrooms, just like ours are. But then if there's a science classroom, how many hoods would you need? What electrical things? Do you need a Bunsen, you know, gas for Bunsen burners and things like that? And then if there's flex spaces, would one be more for like robotics, STEM, maker space, right? Or one is gonna be more for like art and music. And so those are the type of programming detailed decisions that we'll have more programming meetings about user groups and how they're involved in that process. And then, you know, most classrooms are gonna have standard casework and a closet and storage and things like that for the teachers. But then if it's a science, they'll have more storage requirements, right? And that's why the rooms are a little bit bigger, because you've got more cabinets for all the different science equipment that you're gonna need. So those are the type of things I'm hearing, but that'll be a lot more detailed programming. Once we get the concepts laid out of where we wanna put things, then we'll have that detailed programming meeting talking about what's the use, like the library, how much shelving do we need? Is there a circulation desk? What does that look like, right? What's our tech standards? Is every room gonna have a flat screen and so on? So those are the kind of other more detailed decisions that have to happen.
Eric, do you have a final answer on whether we can get the parking spots in the parking garage? Because the larger the classroom, the more adults that we have on campus, so they need parking spots.
And Peter.
Oh, so that means less parking spots. for
Yeah, and we've been working with Federal Realty, who's one that would manage the property, and we've been in discussion with them about that, about how can we get some extra parking for staff? And then if visitors come to visit, volunteers and things, then there's available space. Yeah, we've been working on that with the property managers out there.
Do you know when we'll have an answer? Like, yes, we can have this many spots right now.
I don't, but I don't think it's gonna be difficult to deal with, but we are working on it.
I have a question, maybe you're gonna talk about this, I don't know, but, so. You have this is the less expensive, medium expensive, most expensive, so. Obviously, the most expensive has the most classrooms, the most square footage of space, but. It also has these two custom buildings that if we did away with them. And did the Folia buildings, would the cost go down so that it would be kind of more moderate, like that it would fall in line with. The middle or? no?
Yeah, we have to, like, we didn't put the dollar values to it, so we have
Right,
to,
yeah.
like, so, cause yeah, like, great, it is kind of complicated, you could say, okay, about, roughly $1,000 a square foot talking general, but because the folia and the custom are different values per square foot, you have to throw it all into an Excel sheet and,
Right,
and pump something out and also kind of do, that'll be the next phase, is to do more
Okay.
detailed estimating. Once we kind of got these narrowed down some more, that was gonna be our next step, because obviously that is a very important question, is dollars, to
Right.
each of these, so we didn't have them for this meeting, but if we tweak some of these, it's definitely a next step in, dialing in the custom and the folia.
well, I think having. The most flexibility for number of students is, so I like concept two because it has the most classroom space, but.
But yeah, could
It's
you
also, the most, you know, anyway, so if we can,
take advantage of some more
Right.
folia opportunities to reduce
Right,
the cost of the added square footage?
Well, and I mean, I know you're saying that concept one costs more than concept three, but I would love to get a better sense of like how much more, because I think the difference in capacity was really not that big. It was like 12
12,
students
yeah.
more, but if we're paying, you know, like how much more are we willing to pay for
3
that?
million, big picture, I talk about 3 million-ish, difference between concept one and 30.
3 million?
Yeah, because it's about 3,000 square feet, so it's talking $1,000 a square foot.
I don't think I would do that, but see, that's really important to know. I would never choose an extra 12 students for $3 million. But I would love to see as like a concept four, maybe taking concept three and doing the two-story folia instead of the TKK. Unlike Jim, I like concept two the least because I think it over weighs like the TKK classrooms. And I don't think that
Oh.
that has as much flexibility as the two-story.
Great, yeah.
Yeah, I'm trying to understand most of it.
Well, I was gonna ask. All of these seem to have, given that the gym is fixed. All of them seem to have prioritized PKK being very close to the parking lot as opposed to the multi, which I'm not sure is what I would prefer, so I was wondering if staff has any, like, how important is that? I mean, how important is
I
that?
think on a
Direct access?
daily basis, you have families walking their kids to TK, whereas on occasions, you have families walking to a multi.
Yeah.
Right?
There's a lot of competing.
Or,
Somewhere multi is way back, right?
Yeah, but that's not
Is that
the
an
long-term plan,
No,
yes,
I
and
understand.
yes, it's an issue, and I absolutely, there's very little light on that campus, it's difficult to find.
Really well, the all around campus, that's code requirement, anyway, so just let you know that. Lots of lighting all the way in the parking lot.
Yeah, and all of our schools have are laid out, Laura has a.
Is there a track?
Yes, yes.
Yeah.
The fields that aren't, yes, around that, all the green, and that back, there is a.
Not in a way, but like.
Not like a
walking
track,
path.
like a walk, it looks like a decomposed granite
Not like a-
walking.
So
not for like track and field
Correct.
sports.
Correct.
No, not like a, dimensioned like track, it's a walking path, which you could probably measure out if they're using PE in the mile, you would have to go out there and figure out what that distance is.
And getting back to Stella's point, because I've been writing down like the differences, like here, and I don't understand. The difference between 1 and 3, it's only 3,000 square feet, it's not that many more kids, it's 2 classrooms. It's 1 special ed and 1 flex, so I don't understand why it's $3 million.
The admin's a separate building. I think that's the
Um,
difference.
Yeah, the admin is
Oh, I see.
in the two-story folia in option 3. And in option one, it's a standalone building.
And then just for round numbers, we, in construction, like the cost of construction is about $1,000 a square foot, so that's where we're getting that number, why it's three, it's, yeah, it's extra, you know, it's a lot, but that's not what it costs.
Does that $1,000 per square foot include what you add for overruns or?
It's also,
It doesn't include that or does
It does not, that's like the hard construction cost, and then we would have a separate budget for contingency or cost escalation as well.
So, and you've said in the past that that's 25% to 33%.
Well, we wouldn't do, that's a big contingency or allowance.
What is the standard number?
You know, for new construction, in between 5 to 10%. Because, you know, modernization, you might have a little bit higher because you're worried about maybe 15%. It just depends, what type of modernization you're doing, because once you start opening up walls that haven't been opened up in 50 years, you could find things, and so you want to have a little more, yeah.
Eric, can I ask a clarifying
Yeah.
question? You mentioned 25%. I want to make sure. Oftentimes, project costs will differ from construction costs by around 25%. Project costs include a lot more than just the contingency you're talking about.
Yeah.
So that's why the 25% is a valid number for project cost differential, but Eric mentioned something closer to 5 or 7% for contingency. I just didn't want to confuse those two.
Yeah,
You just confused those two.
soft.
well,
So what's the difference between project cost and construction cost?
I can,
Go for it.
so the project cost would be, cost of the architect, the engineers, the testing lab, all the other costs of the furniture,
DSA.
fixtures, equipment, DSA fees, all the things that are part of the project other than the actual construction. And so there's a project cost, there's a construction cost. And then when we break it down, we'll be bringing a budget to the board and we'll try to break it down for all the different categories.
So the $1,000 a square foot roughly is a construction cost.
Yes.
Yeah.
And we can fine tune all that, but I just want you to have a rough, like that's
Or-
the rough easy math, we'll do the
Yeah.
detailed math
Yeah,
for you.
definitely.
I'll get Bria and give Esther to do the detailed math.
And so I know when Brent did the master plan, the hard cost was the construction cost, and then he had that about 65 or, you know, about 25% to 30% of your construction of your budget is gonna be soft costs, which are all those other things.
One of the things that's sort of like bothers me a little bit is, at least in the pictures, the first story building, first story classrooms seem to be quite a bit darker than the second story. And the reason is because there's a big.
You know, the clear
window.
story, we could.
Are there standards for how much light you have to have lumens or whatever it is?
There are, exactly.
Yeah,
And all the classrooms meet the minimum. What we might need to do is in the upstairs, you may not need to turn the lights on to meet that minimum, whereas downstairs you need to turn lights on. That's probably the differential.
But there'll be LED light, I don't know what these lights, these actually are horrible, but,
these
but
are
they-
horrible.
yeah, but they'll be, they're fully, you saw in the picture, they're the like, the pendant lights that come down, so they're much easier on the eyes, like, so that's one of the things we think about is those learning environments, yeah, how poorly those portable fluorescent lights are for the kids, so, even if they're not getting the natural light, they're gonna have good, we call it fixed lighting, or
Yeah, artificial lighting.
One other thing, is I'm very surprised to see that there are 68 classrooms that are being designed here. Because that's not what we discussed in closed session.
I'm sorry.
I'm very surprised that there's 68 classrooms in these designs, because that's not what we discussed. What's that?
You mean 6, 7, 8?
Yes.
Okay.
Because that's not what we discussed in closed session.
I don't think that that's true.
Closed session topic should stay in closed session.
But that's also true.
Yeah. Well, my understanding was that we're not gonna put 5, that's 68 classrooms.
Can I have some thoughts?
So the good news, I mean, this would, I mean, a 4th and 5th grade classroom is no different from a 6th, 7th, and 8th grade classroom. I guess the only difference is the flex spaces, making sure you have, that ability for the
Yeah,
standard classroom.
Yeah, if you had, middle school age class students, you would want to have the spaces that they need for the curriculum. So you need the science labs and whatnot, that's goes with that curriculum. But any typical classroom that's 960 can be, you know,
No, I understand.
yeah.
So one of the things that, another thing that we said is, like, that this is an LASD school. Does this imply that we're going to 68? We're having TK through 8 as, one of our models?
Right now, these are just concept drawings to look at the goal of today was to look at the layout of where the buildings are within a campus. The grades are completely interchangeable unless you're looking at TK or those flex spaces.
And I think we also want to show like loading and it matches our loading, and then
Right.
also look at the different options that are out there, different grade levels, combinations, things again. I think with the flexibility, you can do any grade level you want. You can do, and we could build an even bigger school if we wanted to, right? But for right now, we're just working on just some concepts about what we have in front of us.
And there's no discussion of what school is going there. This is just at the concept level.
Well, what's the flexibility, like if we design a certain thing with the TK and K where it is, and then we decide not to offer TK and K at this site, can we then just not build it at that point?
What point is that? When you're deciding?
A year from now?
Yeah, I mean, it'll be, we're planning on, I guess that's the next slide, starting construction next May. So yes, you have the some design costs for it, but as long as we haven't started it, then yeah, you have that blank plot of land that you can do something else with, or put regular classrooms in.
Yeah. Oftentimes we'll have clients where we'll master plan a campus and they'll phase it in. And then over time, they may encounter declining enrollment over the course of phasing it in, so we never end up building that last building. Or they may change program and we'll end up making that last building something different, you know, but, so to your point, yeah, we will probably get it all designed in order to stay on schedule. And if there's a reason to change course at some point, we would just, you know, phase in the construction, so that would be the last thing built and maybe not built. I mean, how do you want to do it?
And then some of the things we've also talked about, for construction is you kind of want to start at the bottom and work your way out during construction. So if you can do some of the foyer buildings first, which is a quicker process and review and actual construction schedule, that allows you time to get the other buildings approved by DSA, and then those would be kind of working your way out. It's harder to bring cranes in and equipment if you build all these MPRs and things in front of it. So that's also the timing of how you want to build things. And again, it's all, once we get a detailed construction schedule, then, which is kind of segueing to our next kind of thought.
Well, kind of, yeah, well, I want to make sure we have a chance to, I would like to offer some more general thoughts about layout.
Yes.
Possible layout changes. So I think, so California and Showers are both very busy streets. And so to some extent is store access along the Hetch Hetchy. Like, I know we can screen things, but it's still pollution and noise and all the rest of that kind of stuff. One of the reasons I was interested to sort of ask about moving the multi to where Kinder and TK is, because that seemed like a taller building on that edge to sort of help screen from that. Can't do that, that's fine. I could also see the multi next to the gym, sort of as close to the gym as possible. But, and the point of that is, I would like to see, if possible, some plans that open this up more to the blacktop space. Like, I don't want to, if we make the campus feel that there's like a fence around the buildings, and then there's this blacktop space that's kind of hard for the kids to access, I think that would be a mistake and would sort of lead to.
So that NPR, like in option one, the NPR, like turn it 90 degrees where the shade structures are right now.
Right, that would make a lot more sense to me to have the NPR, yeah, sort of parallel to the gym, right up next to the gym where the little patch of shade structures are, and then the whole rest of the campus now feels like it's open to the blacktop.
Yeah, that's cool.
Maybe
I like
we need
that.
some separation between the buildings, maybe that's why you pushed it down there, but.
And one question I'll have for you is, after hours, does the district or does this campus want to have the blacktop available to the community? And if so,
Sounds like part of it has to.
because that, we do work on a lot of older schools where that's kind of the way it is, but then for perimeter security, they get into a challenge where in order to secure the campus, so there's not vandalism or whatnot at the school buildings, you have a challenge to get access to the blacktop after hours.
Well, I mean, I don't know what anybody else's opinion is, if, I don't know what the current state of the discussion with the city, if the city is gonna insist on access to tennis courts or pickleball or whatever at a time where we want the campus to be locked down, we may have to do what they've done at some Mountain View Wisconsin schools and kind of fence off half the blacktop with an opening so that during school hours, kids can get to the whole thing, but after
Yeah.
school hours,
Yeah.
we can block off part of it. But
So one of the things, the fencing there, which are obviously we could change, but the fencing would preclude any of these from being community school. If you're gonna lock down the school, can't be a community school.
I'm not sure. Yeah, I'm not sure I follow.
Well, you have to have access after hours.
To the buildings themselves. Yeah, you would just unlock the gates.
Okay. So far, my understanding of what's the discussions that are going on is that we lock down the schools at night. What I'm saying is that, if we have a community school, then we can't. do that.
And we do have, clients that have that scenario, so what we'll do, often what we'll do is we'll have multiple points of entry and egress in the perimeter that can be locked when the school or the district wants it to be, and essentially what that means is they're locked during the school day. And as soon as the school day is out, they can all be opened, and they can be open as long as they want, so if you have community school, you have all your classrooms being used by a group in the evening. The key there is that it's a supervised situation, right? It's not, I mean, there's grown-ups there and they belong there and they're doing what they belong there. So having all those gates open and also to Amber's point earlier that because of the code requirements these days, the campus will be amply well lit. So it won't be dark, and you'll have plenty of supervision. So it's really not a security problem to have all those gates open, right? As soon as community school goes home at 9:30 at night, you can lock it down. There's no shenanigans in that core where it's hard for the police to surveil as they're driving by and stuff like that.
Okay, yeah, fine.
The only thing that I would, just listen to everybody, is I don't wanna see our campus, whether it's the blacktop or whatnot, carved up by a bunch of gates. You know, what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
carve up the blacktop, and just carve up like I'm just trying to think of how can we make it feel like more like our own open campus without having, I'm just picturing like kids like on one half of the fence on the blacktop. Watching the kids on the other side of the fence, and like I
Yeah, it
don't,
needs
you
to be
know.
well thought out and
Yeah.
mixed team, yeah, some nice like big double gates or how it
Yeah,
lays out so that it doesn't feel like.
Exactly.
your point is very well taken.
I didn't realize that we owed the city blacktop space. I thought it
I might have
was.
I think we need to get some
Yeah.
clarification.
Okay,
Yeah.
But yeah, we've had preliminary discussions, but a lot of thought needs to be
Yeah.
put into
the
it.
other,
Pickleball's all the rage. Everybody wants pickleball.
the other refinement I think I might be interested in seeing is, so if you do move that, the multi, who I was suggesting before, is looking at what what would be involved, and then maybe adding on, like basically combining the custom admin building and the custom multi in concept 2 into like one building,
Yeah,
maybe minus the library. Because one of the things that I'm a little bit concerned about with some of these layouts is the user experience approaching the school, like because we've got this curve and then square buildings. Like some of our schools are challenged in the way they present their first impression to the community, and because you don't want to be approaching like a corner or a
yeah,
weird
good point.
opening, so
Yeah,
like, that's maybe the one area where it might be willing to spend a little bit extra money on custom construction, is then if we can do a really nice approach to
welcome.
admin in the front of the
Yeah,
campus.
easily identified, all that, yeah,
Right,
yeah. good
subject to access requirements.
Yeah.
Although if we move the multi, maybe not for the fire engines to go through the EVA around the top and come around the back
Yeah,
through the
yeah, it
blacktop.
could be kind of this whole.
yeah, they should be able to drive through the blacktop, right?
Yeah.
If we didn't have all the fences.
Yes, ma'am.
Oh, yeah, so actually, I should modify my previous comment about concept 2. I think the reason I didn't like tag, and that's because of the custom admin and library spaces, which, you know, we could possibly resolve. But like, another thing I would want to see is a reduction in TKK classrooms. So I would be interested, equally to what I proposed before, if concept 2 had, I don't know if it's necessary here, but either just getting rid of one of the TK wings, or, you know, replacing it with that 2-story folia. And then definitely not doing custom buildings for the admin and library, and I don't know if we could, if we had the 2-story there.
Well, it's kind of concept one, right, where got rid of the TKK building and put an admin in the folia there, right? And the library is in the
But,
2-story folia.
but can you put a library above a TKK classroom?
But the first graders are accessing
okay.
it, what does that do?
Oh, okay.
But you
Well,
can put the
but-
library in one of the lower,
I mean, I understand what you're saying, but I think that people go to school in TKK 1, 2, and 3, I think they start leaving school in 4, 5, 6, so I think if you limit your TKK classrooms. But anyway,
Yeah, so you're trying to get kids in.
Yeah.
but all of our schools currently have 2 classes per grade level. Anyway, so I don't really anticipate needing 3 at this
okay,
particular
but then
school.
if you don't need, then you just need 2 of every grade.
Right, yes, but right now they put 3 TKs and 3 Ks there.
Right, but
so-
they also have 3 classrooms all the way through 3rd grade.
We could also put more kids in the TK classroom if we have another adult in there. Right, it sounds like the TK classrooms are pretty large,
That's
so you
correct.
wouldn't have to limit it to like 20 kids, but you could. 30 kids and have an extra adult in it. I just also wanted to say, I like the blue triangles, the outdoor covered, not just for like lunch, but I see like a lot of our teachers, they like the kids go out there
Yes,
and do
outdoor
work.
learning spaces.
Outdoor
yeah.
learning spaces, what I don't like about some of the concept two, and I think concept, there's not enough of that, at least. Maybe
Yeah, you're
concept one
blessed.
is.
You add square footage and then a building and then you're losing square footage of outdoor learning
Exactly.
or learning or recreation space.
I would actually, I wasn't gonna bring this up this time because I seemed like too much in the weeds. But I do think we're gonna want a relatively thick planted buffer on the Hetch Hetchy side of Blacktop. Like, it would be great if that was all bushes that you can't see through, basically.
It's a screen, yeah, visibly
Yeah,
screened
like
from
a-
the shopping center, yes.
Right. So I feel
Yeah.
if we're negotiating with the city about what will fit into that blacktop space, then I should bring that up, that I would not want to see like just blacktop right up to the.
California and, Charlotte.
Yeah, I would like to see it there too.
Yes, yeah, we'll have to do a lot of screens, so when you're in that school, you don't feel like you're in, busy streets and in the
Right.
middle of the shopping center.
It's almost when you're driving down Homestead Road in front of the Apple campus and all you see are bushes.
Yeah, you don't realize the spaceship's
you don't
behind
really-
it.
Yeah, well, we don't have the, I mean, that's partly because they push enormous berms up on their perimeter,
Yeah.
like, we don't have the acreage to do that.
But it's also like kind of dampen some of the noise too, from the
Yeah.
traffic, if you have all.
Yeah. It's just nice to have some nice landscaping and
Yeah,
everything.
definitely.
Can I throw out my 10-second pitch of just the one thought I had from an admin perspective that I liked about number 3 is line of sight. When you're trying to find a student, making the space open and having more line of sight and being mindful of like, if I'm coming out of the admin building, trying to find somebody that just thinking from an ant's view, what can you see? And just looking through that some of these have buildings in so many different places. I can't see the blacktop at all. And so I can't look out quickly to see, is someone even out there watching these children? And just kind of thinking through that. That would be my one pitch.
It's a great point.
Do you want to say a little bit more, like more specifically, or?
Like if
Let's
the
say
teacher
your
calls and
concept-
says like, my student has returned back from the bathroom. I go, great, I'll go look for them, but it can take a long time. If I'm having to go on the backside of all the buildings because I can't see. I think the difference, I love being a gardener, but I think through Springer and it takes them 30 seconds to walk up the backside of the building and look down every single hallway. It is so, and then you can look across the blacktop and you can see everything. There's almost nowhere that a student can easily hide except for on the fire lane side. And so you've got a really quick view of my own child who was out the other day, who didn't return, and she was in the wrong hallway. And someone found her real fast. I was like, Emma, wrong hallway, go back to class kind of thing. But in Gardner, sometimes I'm having to go around the whole admin building. If you've done that whole thing, having to go all the way around the front, all the way down the middle. I can't see anything for that whole first 30 seconds. And I have to get all the way around all the buildings before I can see the blacktop. And then I'm having to go all the way around more buildings because I just don't have a good line of sight, the way that everything's just kind of been orientated.
Well, and some of our kids do tend to elope,
Sure,
right?
they sure do.
Well, so that's, I mean, to that point, like, I could also see, if we're deciding that multi-access by parents is more of a sometimes thing, then, I mean, I could see pushing the multi all the way back to up against the Hetch Hetchy right of way. If when you sort of walk through the front gate, it's obvious where it is, even in the dark, then maybe it doesn't have to be right next to the parking lot.
Do you mean like you would put it in the corner where the outdoor dining is now and then you could move the outdoor
Which
dining?
Well, three,
Like,
no,
what if you took
actually, I think
this
three
and
is,
tucked
it's
it
too
in
far
like-
away, like, yeah, where he's
Yeah, or here and tucked it in over here and then.
like over there, just to push it back to the perimeter.
Yeah.
And the radius, no. Everybody's over there.
Yeah, I mean.
I want to be mindful of our time, so this
I just want to-
5:30.
Do you want to go to the time?
Yeah, so I wanted to see the schedule real quick and then, so on the schedule, just like highlights, we showed the design. Like, right now we're showing the design in 3 increments, so one's gonna be like a demo and site utility package that would get us going on construction next May. And then Inc. 2 is the folia classrooms, because we can do that as a separate standalone package, and it'll get through DSA much quicker. And then Inc. 3 would be the custom buildings that would take a little bit longer to design and a little bit longer to get out of DSA, so construction on that phase would start a little bit longer. Right now, we're showing, starting programming, so I know this is kind of a little bit of programming what we're doing right now, right? So, but we would start, once we get like an NTP on, to keep going with the design. Right now, we're showing that as June 2nd at that board meeting.
Sorry,
So that's-
NCP.
Notice, sorry, no, don't take it. Notice to proceed. So you guys said, yes, green light, keep going with your programming. Then we would spend the summer, working through these details some more, and a little bit of this, the site, conceptual layouts of floor plans of the buildings. And then just wanted to point out that we're kind of pretty tight schedule with this, all laid out in the perfect world. We're finishing in August of 2028. So if this, not trying to pressure anybody, but if the design pushes even like a month or 2, then, we're not able to guarantee opening at the start of the school year right now. When maybe we're finishing in September or October or November, which is less than ideal. So, just wanted to let you know, it kind of used up all the float in our schedule. If you wanted to hold to that August 2028.
So you're saying there's no slack?
Yeah,
Yeah, so ideally, we can get direction to proceed, notice to proceed. You know, in the immediate first step, and then we can move into finalizing the program and design. Thereafter.
So sorry, on the schedule here, does Inks 1 through 3 programming community engagement? I'm sorry, I know I may have missed it if you talked about what that entails, but.
I did not say that. I don't know if you
We
want to
did
touch on
talk
that.
about that, but we kind of alluded to it in that, first of all, this was a great work session. This is the ideal
Yeah, this
way
is
it
fun.
unfolds. You guys have some the great questions and we're right on track with that. What we want to do moving forward is we want to make sure that we have these kind of meetings with whatever stakeholders you think really need to be informed. And we can even have a planning session where we kind of talk about what stakeholders just need to be informed, which ones need to be involved, which ones need to be approving what we're doing. You know, which ones need to be making the decisions, right? So there's this whole kind of engagement with your stakeholders for transparency to make, but also to make sure we're getting the right design. you know,
Like the feedback on the line of sight and stuff like that,
Perfect,
right? You know?
yeah. You know, so there's that whole process and really, what we do and how much we do really does vary from district to district, because you all have your own read on the pulse of your community and what is needed. And it could be your community at large, and we're talking neighbors and people like that at a community meeting like a town hall, or it could be your community meeting for people who occupy this site. And anywhere in between. It's just what's your appetite for transparency and engagement? And then the schedule has some time dedicated for that, not a lot of time, because that can really go. You go. So we just try to like say, okay, here's a good little chunk.
Well, so that was my question, I guess, maybe for staff, is, I mean, that's shown as sort of end of Q2, which is like, we can't do community engagement over the summer, I mean, no way, so.
Well, we've talked a lot about also using standards for, when we get into some of the, in the classrooms and in the spaces, what is our standard for different elements, right? How much storage and backpack hangers and all of that stuff. I don't know that we need community engagement around that if we're just going to use our standards. So we need to figure out what community engagement looks like, what the purpose is for this particular site.
When does it? I thought Kim's point
Yeah.
was valuable because Kim's boots on the ground,
Yeah,
right?
absolutely.
So when does it make sense to have like Kim and like the other admins in the library and like,
Teachers.
yeah, to have I was thinking more so like CSEA, not so much regular teachers, but to have input in how they practically use the space, how they interact with the space. Is it after we choose one of these options or before we choose an option? Because this would never have occurred, like Kim's point would never have occurred, sure, about line of sight. And I don't know how many other folks who work on campus, but it occurs to Kim, right? 'Cause she,
Well, I think,
like, when does it make sense, I'm saying, when does it make sense to involve that?
well, I wanted to offer an opinion about that.
Yes.
I think we need to sort of say who's gonna go there, so that the people who need to be involved know that they need to be involved.
But everyone's.
That'd be ideal, it doesn't, I don't understand, you have a lot of
Yes.
complexity, that would be ideal, but you could also do it by a typical group, like a typical, and by one or two principals or administration, you could do it and speak to it in general, if that's the parameters that you're under right now.
That's fair.
And you're diving into yeah, and you're not getting into like the programming yet, you wanna get the square footage and the classroom count and the layout dialed in. If there's some more like detailed like hooks and like, but more detailed stuff, that's in like schematic design and design development, then we're gonna be nailing down some more of the details within the classroom space themselves, how much casework is needed and that kind of thing.
Like Kim's point goes more to layout,
Right.
right, which is why.
But I think one of the things is like when they talk about programming and concepts is if we are gonna do two or three TKs or Ks, we have to make sure we design those because those have special design requirements and space has to be designed that way. And then whatever grade level we decide goes there, where it goes. Yeah, there is some flexibility in it, but we also need to know what programs are going there and what concepts and where we wanna lay things out. Yeah, we could put buildings all around, but then it's all free. We can do a lot of things, we just can't do everything.
Yeah, but to your point, it helped, you all made great points, time's of the essence, right, we're getting ready for summer right around the corner. Ideally, we can get some engagement with those folks before they leave for the summer. Because that would really give us a leg up in getting schematic design moved forward during, July and August. So that would be kind of the designer's answer to that question.
That's why this is set up.
Thank you.
When do we start the conversation about the programming? Just so I have an idea in my head of what our deadlines are.
It's already started. This is it,
This is
correct?
the-
This is like the
Yeah.
beginning of programming.
Yeah, in a lot of ways, we inherited what's called bridging documents, and so there was some level of programming done before we got involved. And that's kind of what we used as our launching off point. But all that can be confirmed and vetted by y'all. Now, I'm not sure y'all are the same folks who did that programming document or not. But, yeah, we need to move forward in getting that locked in order to stay on track. Ideally, we can get approval to proceed, and then we can dive into those meetings. And I don't know when the
Right,
last
but-
day is when folks are gone, but
Well, so to Vladimir's point, if, like, whether we're gonna go K to 8 makes a difference, right? Like, if we're not gonna go K to 8, we don't need as many flex spaces, we don't necessarily need STEAM spaces. So,
Yeah, we'd be
We have
good
to make
to
the
have, like, the
decision.
number of classrooms would be important in terms of like trying to dial in the.
yeah.
But remember, the flex spaces are inherent to the design of the building. Right? I mean, they could be flex, they could just.
Well, yeah, fitting in with the, yes, they could end up being a regular
Yes.
classroom, you're absolutely correct, they're flexible,
No.
they are a little bit bigger under this scenario, but you could use it as a regular classroom, we could carve
Yeah.
out some of the extra space. for some
but if we're not gonna try to go, if we're not trying to go 2 classrooms K8, right?
Correct.
We could just build the 2L. And that's it. If that would accommodate the number of kids that we need to accommodate in the short term. So
Is that 550 students, or what's that, is it 500 students, what's the,
this is my point. I don't think as a board we've made that decision.
I mean, that's what we,
You'd like to know.
Well, I don't know if anybody else is feeling stressed, or if you wanna know all this information, I feel like the board needs to have another special meeting, study session, whatever you wanna call it. If you all are amenable.
So given that there's no slide, My expectations are we not meet the August. If we do, that's fine.
But if we don't meet August 2020, then we have to wait till August 2029, because you wouldn't move kids in the middle of the school year. Right?
We
You
could.
could, but.
I think, you know, there's a cost to doing that, and it's great to start the school year off in a new building. But we would have to figure out what that looks like, if we could meet the schedule for,
Classroom by classroom.
anything possible.
It'll be stressful for the teachers, I think, because they set up their classrooms
Yeah.
for the kids. So I don't want them setting up their classrooms during the.
Sure.
But yeah,
Sure.
I'm just trying to understand, what is the cost if we don't meet that deadline? What does that really mean?
It means, well, I think if, one of my thoughts is, you know, you want to open up as soon as you can, there's a cost escalation could be 5% per year, 6% per year. So if we open a month or two late, you're gonna save a lot more than if you open a whole year late. That makes sense, right?
Sure.
So you would wanna open as soon as you can to fall 28 to get in there. And then, if you have to hire extra movers or whatever to help get it all moved over a weekend, that's all possible. But you would save a lot of money by not delaying it a whole year because you couldn't meet that August deadline.
Does the entire campus have to be 100% ready? Like, what if the classrooms are ready? Maybe the library's not ready yet. Or
There's
the-
a whole
Yeah,
DSA
I
occupancy
mean, that's,
question.
yes, because we're doing the folios first, those will be done first and the custom buildings will lag. So that is definitely, an option where maybe, yeah, you're getting the classrooms, but they don't have all of the extra spaces. That's
Right.
something that could be. Yeah.
Yeah, as long as we get DSA, because it's occupancy, benefits occupancy, where you know, the fire alarm is working and everything, then you can. A lot of flexibility, but it has to be ready to move in.
So when do you need the notice to proceed? When do you need all, don't say today, yesterday. Tomorrow.
I mean, right now, we're showing the June 2nd meeting, at least to give us the green light to keep going with this design.
On
and
design
approval.
concepts, right? It's not the
Yes, that's nothing to.
final decision of everything, but do they continue working and start having conversations with the right people around those programmatic
Yeah, I
pieces?
think like number of classroom kind of square footage, and it'd be nice to have.
Yeah, for sure, yeah, the
And we can still tweak the layout a little bit.
But we don't need to decide the type of fume hood and all the specialized stuff. For those that need more design development, construction drawings, and that all has to be done with the construction drawings, but now it's basically the big concept where things gonna go. And then take all the feedback we heard tonight, then I think we can talk about how we present that again and come back and show maybe take all the things we heard tonight and maybe come back again.
We're not making a motion or anything on this, so tonight, right?
You just gave us a bunch of homework. so.
Yeah.
Oh, could we actually, I have a question for Brian, about, like, so I know you dislike concept 3. But as someone who does like it, I was kind of wondering what we could do to make it more to your liking, and I think one thing you did not like was the placement of the multi-purpose room, and did you already propose moving it between the admin and the gym?
That was what I had proposed, but
Okay.
yeah, I mean, if where you're going is moving it.
Okay, I mean, I think either one of those would be an improvement.
Well, so the
Either-
other thing I didn't like about concept 3 is that the blacktop is entirely behind this wing of.
Right.
What's labeled as grade 5 and 6 classrooms, right? Again, to the point about trying to find
Yeah.
kids. Now
How do
you've
we
got
build
like
it
this
up?
courtyard over
Space
here and the
more.
blacktop over here and the fields over there.
But-
If you
okay.
move this up here and push this down, you still have line of sight.
That's why, I mean, I think we've given the more
Yeah.
general feedback, which is we would like, you know, the secretary would like to be able to walk out of the admin building and see as much as possible.
But she's stuck at Gardner forever.
In all these other concepts, you still have buildings in the way, they just aren't classroom buildings.
Right, well, that was what I was saying. I would like that to not be the case. Like, and I don't wanna, like, I'm not an architect, so, and I don't know what all the constraints are, so I don't know exactly how to achieve that, but if we can achieve that, that would be great.
I do like for all the 2-story buildings in 1 and 2 are on one side of the campus. Like, there's nothing behind the two-story buildings that we would
Right,
want to.
that's true.
Are there any other questions, comments for these guys before we adjourn the closing?
I have a question. Is the gym part of the agreement with Mountain View? It seems like we don't really have all the facilities for middle school if we don't have a track, but we don't need a gym just for elementary school.
Well, again, there have been staff level discussions with the city of Mountain View, and part of my understanding was that the decision was made that the track took up too much space for other ball fields and stuff like that, given the space, given the parameters of the site, like there was an option that was presented a couple of years ago at this point that did have like a full track the way that some of ours do, and the problem was that then there was no space for like a baseball field.
Thank you both for being here. It's so exciting. All right, we're going to adjourn us to closed session now.
Thank you very